Welcome to week 2 of my 90-day carnivore challenge. This second week has been a little bit pants, to be honest. I've had quite a few headaches and I even think I gave myself a mild dose of food poisoning at the weekend from a hard-boiled egg that had been in the fridge when I looked it up for over a week, which I think was pushing it too far. Tasted fine, my guts didn't seem to like it. So what's with the headaches? I think actually it's more hormonal than anything else. My period, annoyingly, sort of decided to come back. Didn't fully fledged come back, but thought about it for a while. And the reason that's a bit strange is that I think I'm heading into perimenopause. My periods have been all over the place for at least a year, and I haven't had one for about 3 months. And before that, at least 3 months, maybe 6. To be honest, I'm over them now. I'm at peace with the old end of the body clock thing and all that stuff. And I just want them gone because when they show up, they tend to bring a load of headaches with them. And those are a real problem for me and a real throwback to the days when I was getting migraines all the time, like literally half of each month. And they're so debilitating, and so it's not only not very nice in the moment, but it reminds me of a time when I just got used to having them nearly all the time and it drove me mad. From a what's interesting point of view though, I did notice that my appetite increased a lot, and especially cravings for sweet things, and I may have had a little bit of a massive slip up over the weekend with some 90% dark chocolate that was in my drawer. I mentioned last week what I was like about having things in the house that are a temptation, and I've managed to avoid it up until now, no problem, knowing it's there, although they're tucked away in a drawer where I can't see them. The call was too strong, and so I indulged. The perfectionist part of me wants to say, well, that's it, you've got to start again. But no, I don't think so. There have been some things that I've muddled along with right from the start, like not stopping coffee straight away, and the same with tea. So I'm just going to go with it. It's part of the journey, and we'll just see what happens next. I've also had some problems with reflux, which is annoying. I have a bit of a sensitive stomach when it comes to reflux. And I noticed in my first week that I had a few days of transition where my body was getting used to the change of diet. And this week, I think the reflux is more due to the fact that I've been taking some ibuprofen, which seems to upset the balance in my stomach. I had weight loss surgery a number of years ago, and I think the fact that my stomach has been reduced in size just makes that balance a little bit more delicate. So anything that disrupts that tends to result in some reflux, which is annoying. Rennies are my friend. So apart from feeling a little bit rubbish, there have been some good things. I went out for dinner on Friday and it was fine. We went to a restaurant that had steaks. I had the entrecote, which is ribeye in American, and it was delicious. I had a bit more than I would normally have. It was a 300-gram steak, which is around about 11 ounces. And it's a little bit more than I have. I normally go for about 200 grams, so I was pretty stuffed, but it was nice. What was hilarious was that I said to the waitress, please just bring the steak. I don't want any of the things that go with it. It had salad, and you could have a choice of fries or potato dauphinoise, different kind of potato sides basically. And I said, please don't bring them because it's a waste. I'm not going to eat them. They'll just end up in the bin. So she looked at me a little bit scandalized, but said okay. And a different waitress came out and brought it. And what is typical, there was one man at the table, and they looked at him thinking it would probably be him, but no, put my hand up, it's me. They put it in front of me. What was really funny was that they obviously couldn't just put the steak on the plate. They decorated it with a little squiggle of a balsamic vinegar reduction and a single chive leaf. So it had been very artfully placed, but perfect, exactly what I asked for, and it was delicious. so you can manage to eat out and eat carnivore. It makes for some interesting conversation, and people, you know, asking you why you're just eating that and why aren't you drinking wine and all the other things. But from a practical point of view of being able to get something that you can eat, absolutely fine. My cravings in general have reduced, apart from the little chocolate slip up. What I found interesting is what's been happening with my water and my drinking. I have to excuse my cat here. This is Mimi. She likes to participate in filming. she's currently very friendly, dribbling all over my lap. But yes, water. I mentioned last week that I thought a lot of the cravings I had were for the ritual and the habits, and that has held up actually. And what I've found is that's been wearing off a little bit. The appeal of the hot water has reduced, and the number of times in a day I have it has reduced. But those times when that ritual and those habits are really strong, like first thing in the morning, that's when I absolutely go straight to put the kettle on. But what it made me think about was that addictive quality in general, and what happens with getting through that first stage of getting over those addictions. And it made me think about the first few weeks of keto and what you do to get over those carb cravings. And there's a lot of debate that goes on about whether you should indulge in the alternatives, in the keto treats, in all those recipes that try and ketofy your carb favorites, like the pizzas and the breads and all those kind of things. And I know there are two camps when it comes to that, but this transition period for me of drinking the plain hot water made me realize that for some people, having an alternative can just get you through those first early stages when it's really, really difficult to ignore those cravings that are gnawing away at you, making you want to climb the walls. And having something that doesn't quite satisfy but goes a long way towards satisfying those cravings does really help. But because they're not the real deal, because they don't completely hit the spot, what I found anyway is that their appeal just wanes, and you start thinking that they're just less appealing, and so your use of them tapers off. And that reminded me of what it was like when I first started keto. When I started, I wanted to try all these things, all the alternatives. Part of the reason for that is that I like cooking and I like experimenting with food, but it was just trying to satisfy that craving. But because they rarely matched up, it just helped taper off. I know that's not the same for everybody, but I just found it interesting thinking about that process. And of course, some of the alternatives turn out to be more delicious than the original, and many of us go on to enjoy them more. Things like fathead pizzas, some of the crackers you can make, some of the cakes and desserts, especially as our tastes change and we develop a less and less sweet tooth. I think that can be the case. But so just a little off on a tangent for keto and getting over addictions there. But like I said, I just find it interesting unraveling the way I tick. So what about results this week? Well, I have a note of them all. My weight is down 1.5 kilos this week. I have lost 2 centimeters off my waist and 2 centimeters off my hips. What I forgot to mention last week was the change in my blood glucose and blood ketones, because that was actually quite an important thing for me going into this. My blood glucose in particular had been creeping up in the mornings, and one of the big reasons for that, I think, is my late night snacking. But other than that, I'm not really sure. It was higher than it should be. It was quite often in the mid to high 5s, which is too high for me. It needs to be lower than that. So when I started or rather before I started, it varied between 5.2 and I have a high here of 5.9. That's my blood glucose, and my blood ketones were 2.3 just before I started, but frequently in the weeks before sort of down into the ones. At the end of the first week, my blood glucose had dropped to 4.1 and my ketones were 2.9. At the end of the second week, my blood glucose was 4.4 and my ketones 4.2. So anyone who says that eating carnivore is going to tank your ketones, not in my case, has absolutely done the opposite. Budget wise, I said I thought the budget would go up a little bit. I have been eating more and I have been playing around with a few things that are a tad more expensive. Like I had some tuna, even though it was on special offer, it was more money than I normally spend, and I've had a few more steaks and things like that. But my overall budget was on average €4.40, so hadn't gone up much. But that did include the meal out I had, which was paid for by somebody else. So that skews it a little bit. I would say it's probably more likely heading up to an average of €5 a day this week. I've been eating a little bit more. My breakfast has gone up to 100 grams of sausage, 100 grams of bacon and 2 eggs, where it was more like only 100 grams of the meat and the 2 eggs. So that has increased. And so that's it. Week 2, not as great as week 1, maybe. Just some different things, learn some more interesting things about myself and the way I eat and my cravings and my addictive tendencies. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. I will reply. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button so that you'll be notified when I bring out week 3. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I hope to see you next week. So it's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye from Mimi. See you next time. Bye.